There you have it. Breaking news. Jon Jones has retired from the UFC. As a result, the interim label is being removed. And you heard Dana White, Tom Aspinall, now the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion. He had been waiting to fight Jones in a potential unification bout. Jones's career marred by legal issues and multiple failed drug tests. Arguably the greatest UFC fighter of all time. He retires with a record of 28 wins, 1 loss, 1 no contest, with his only loss coming via disqualification. And now Jon Jones has retired. And for reaction, welcome in CBS Sports combat analyst Brian Campbell. Jon Jones retires from the UFC. BC, what's your reaction?
Disappointment. What an end to an already stretched out, absurd, unnecessary soap opera. Look, there's 2 pieces of news in one here, right? One of it is the greatest fighter in the history of this sport has decided to step aside with basically a perfect record. You mentioned that disqualification loss, which came early in Jones's UFC career. The move that he was disqualified for is now legal. So we are talking about a 2-division champion, the literal GOAT. But we're talking at the same time about a fighter who's been enabled by the UFC to carry on this heavyweight title reign and actively avoid the interim champion who has held that belt for nearly 2 years in what? Hopes of this big super fight, Jones versus Aspinall, that was supposed to bring in record box office numbers for the UFC and maybe launch their new TV deal. But all these years later, and when I say years, Jon Jones emerged from a 3-year retirement in 2023 at the exact time Francis Ngannou left the company and captured the vacant heavyweight title. But since then, he's been injured. He's been out a year. The UFC allowed an unnecessary fight against 41-year-old Stipe Miocic to go on another year after that. And here we are, the summer of 2025, as Jones was about to surpass Cain Velasquez for the longest reign in heavyweight title history, just as Aspinall had already set the record as the longest reigning interim champion. Jon Jones is going to walk away from a fight that he had a hand in stretching out the story of, only this time this isn't Mayweather-Pacquiao. This fight never happened. We have a new heavyweight champion, and he was robbed basically of nearly 3 years of his career to have to wait around to become that.
Do you think part of Jon Jones' decision to retire was because he didn't want to fight Tom Aspinall?
100%. And while it might not be, let's say, Aspinall in particular that is the kryptonite to Jon's Superman approach here, look, when Jon Jones emerged from his 3-year retirement, when he finally moved up to heavyweight and became a 2-division champion, we were ready to cement him as the sport's all-time great. He could have walked away after his injury following the win over Cyril Gane to win that vacant title. He could have walked away after defeating Stipe Miocic last fall. He could have put the belt down in the cage and said, I've had a great career. But the UFC enabled him to stretch out this decision-making, and every time a microphone was put in front of Jones's face in the last 2 years, he's actively told us that he does not want to fight Tom Aspinall. Originally, it was because Aspinall's not accomplished enough. Eventually, it was, well, hey, I'll fight a light heavyweight and Alex Pereira. I'll fight a Francis Ngannou, a former champion, if they bring him back, but not this one man. You do the math yourself. Tom Aspinall has long been called the heavyweight 2.0 of this new era. He's quick. He's got so many attributes that have produced nothing but big-time first-round finishes. At the end of the day, with many years to decide, Jon Jones has decided at age 37 that he's accomplished enough, that he's going to walk away, again, under a normal situation. We'd tip our cap to somebody walking away on their own terms. But Jon Jones has never had a normal professional career, in and out of the bad headlines, as you mentioned so many times. But what he has done right now over the last 2+ years to hold up the sport, hold up the division, and basically attempt to sabotage his own legacy by sitting on the idea that, you know what, I've accomplished enough. You don't get it both ways, Jon. You hung on to the title this long. The biggest fight in the division's history is on the table, and Jon Jones has chosen to walk away. Well, I'm not a fighter. I'm not going to say you're ducking Tom Aspinall, but you want to call yourself a GOAT. This looks a lot more like duck to me, and I hate, believe me, I hate as a journalist saying that. But this is a fighter who has long been enabled his entire career to get away with everything. to be stripped of his title a record 3 times and keep coming back in big title fights, to get arrested for assaulting his family multiple times and have no penalty within the UFC. How about PED tests going wrong? They just moved the state during the week of the fight for Jon Jones. Why? Because he's a star. He's the greatest of all time. But what he's done to the fans, what he's done to the heavyweight division, what he's done to UFC's plans, and what he's done to Tom Aspinall's career arc over the past 2 years, it's unacceptable. It's unforgivable. I'm not gonna tell you that I'm gonna change my vote for Jon Jones as the greatest of all time for whatever that's worth. But if you're a true MMA fan and you don't respond to this news with outright disappointment, I don't know what sport you're watching.
Perhaps the headline will be "Duck, Duck, Retire." We'll see. I mean, this is, as we said, one of the greatest fighters in UFC history. 16 title fight wins, most in UFC history. An incredible record, but yeah, it feels incomplete. You're absolutely right about this.
To interrupt you, this is
absolutely.
the UFC's fault. This is the UFC's fault. This is what happens. The UFC's known for their firm control over the fighters and shrewd decision-making over their entire 30-plus year history. They obviously wanted this super fight, just as the fans did. But when you give Jones this long, uninterrupted runway to sit on that decision, to play games with his own resume, to constantly every other day say the opposite of what he said the day before, what are we doing here? What are we doing here?
Well, now we got some more questions because could this news perhaps open the door for Francis Ngannou to return? What does the future of the heavyweight division look like going forward?
Well, remember, Ngannou got out of his UFC deal in 2023. It was major news. No one's ever really done what Ngannou has done to free him up to pursue professional boxing and, of course, a big victory with the PFL, a rival organization with the UFC. But it's known fact that Ngannou's contract with the PFL is it's not forever. It's coming to a close relatively soon. We've seen Ngannou at the most recent UFC pay-per-view helping his longtime friend Kamaru Usman get prepared for his big fight. Could a return be imminent? It would come down to Dana White, the UFC president and COO, who has long had a contentious relationship with Ngannou. It would certainly need him to get out of the way for a fight to be made. But I do wonder, if Aspinall Jones was the fight of all fights to be made that was supposed to make us forget about the fight that the UFC couldn't make, Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones, could it be Ngannou versus Aspinall that fixes all this? Already you've seen publicly Ngannou wants it, Aspinall wants it, UFC fans want it. I'm pretty sure UFC ownership wants it. But what about Dana White at the end of the day? Will he stop that? Time will only tell. But this was one of those special super fights, passing of the torch possibilities. And here we go. In a sport where you almost never have this happen, it just happened. Thank you, Jon Jones. Thank you, UFC.
Yeah, heavyweight division needs something here. Jon Jones has officially retired from the UFC. Brian Campbell here with the very latest on CBS Sports HQ. BC, thanks. So as a result, the interim label is being removed, and Tom Aspinall, now the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion. And Jon Jones was, you could argue, the greatest champion. Most title fight wins in UFC history with 16. He has officially called it a career with a record of 28-1-1. Jon Jones retired from the UFC.